Indian Territory, 1875. Bass Reeves stands on the Fort Smith courthouse steps, 30 pounds of rusted iron shackles in his hands. Bob Dozier, white outlaw, judge killer, racist who just spit the words slave boy in front of a crowd, bleeds from a fresh gunshot wound, wrists already locked. Bass loops the leg chains around Dozier's ankles, double locked. The same chains that held Bass as property in Arkansas before he escaped during the Civil War. Now they're federal tools. Dozier murdered a federal judge's nephew. $5,000 bounty. Dead or alive. Bass says one sentence. You'll walk or I'll drag you. 200 miles to Fort Smith through Choctaw land. No backup. No telegraph. Dozier's 3 brothers already hunting them both. Bass Reeves arrested over 3,000 criminals in 32 years. This was supposed to be routine. But Dozier knows something about Bass's past that could end everything. By sunrise, half the outlaws in Oklahoma would be tracking them. The chains clink. The journey starts. By the fall of 1875, Bass Reeves had a reputation that crossed every territory line west of the Mississippi. 200 outlaws brought in, 0 escapes. White marshals feared him. Cherokee and Creek outlaws respected him. Federal judges trusted him with cases nobody else would touch. When the warrant came down for Bob Dozier, wanted for murdering Judge Isaac Parker's nephew's family in Arkansas, every white marshal in Fort Smith refused the assignment. Too dangerous. Dozier's brothers controlled half the territory. Bass took it without hesitation. The arrest happened fast. Fort Smith outskirts, Dozier surrounded at a boarding house, defiant even with Bass's Winchester aimed at his chest. Then Dozier saw Bass's face and laughed. I ain't walking nowhere with a slave boy. The crowd went silent. Bass produced the chains. Dozier's smirk faded when he recognized them. Arkansas iron, pre-war make. Or Bass's voice stayed level. You don't know who you're messing with. Dozier grinned. Actually, I do. Those chains carried history Bass never talked about. 1862, during the Civil War, Bass escaped from George Reeves' plantation in Arkansas. The chains were on his ankles when he ran. He didn't just flee, he took them with him. 13 years living with Creek and Seminole tribes, learning their languages, learning to track, learning to disappear. When Judge Isaac Parker appointed him U.S. Deputy Marshal in 1875, Bass brought the chains as evidence of federal service. They became official property, used on over 200 outlaws since. Bass kept one rule. Chains don't care about color, just guilt. Now packing for the 200-mile journey through Choctaw Nation, Bass laid out his supplies in the Fort Smith courthouse basement. Winchester rifle, chains, federal warrant with Dozier's face sketched in ink, one photograph of his wife and children, the only personal item he carried. Judge Parker appeared in the doorway, holding a telegram. Dozier's brothers are already moving. No backup, no telegraph stations between here and the border. Bass nodded. The chains clinked as he coiled them. Parker's final words, bring him breathing. I want him on the stand. Dawn broke cold over Fort Smith on October 3rd, 1875. Bass and Dozier left on horseback. Dozier in chains, hands cuffed to the saddle horn, feet locked in the leg irons Bass looped under the horse's belly. Every step rattled iron. They cleared the town limits within an hour. By noon, Bass spotted the first shadow on the ridgeline. Dozier's brother Jim, rifle visible even from a distance, watching but not engaging. Dozier noticed too. He started talking. You know what's funny? Your real name ain't Reeves. Bass didn't respond. Dozier kept going. It's Benson, Bass Benson. You killed a man in Arkansas when you ran. White overseer named Crawford. Self-defense maybe, but nobody testified. No proof. Just you and the body. Bass's hand tightened on the reins. Dozier's voice dropped to a whisper. My uncle was there. Saw the whole thing. The chains cut into Dozier's ankles, blood staining the stirrups. Bass kept riding. Information is worth more than freedom. Bass knew it. Dozier was betting his life on it. 50 miles into Choctaw territory, Bass made camp on a ridge visible from 3 directions. Intentional. If Dozier's brothers wanted to move, he'd see them coming. The campfire smoke rose straight into the October sky. Dozier sat with his back against a cottonwood, chains reflecting firelight like warnings. Bass counted 3 riders circling at distance. Jim Dozier and 2 others, Frank and Cole, the full set of brothers. They couldn't shoot without risking Bob. Bass understood the mathematics of family. That's when Dozier leaned forward, chains clinking. "They'll trade you, you know. Your secret for my freedom." Bass poured coffee, said nothing. Dozier's voice carried across the firelight. "Federal marshal with a murder charge hanging over him? Even Judge Parker can't protect that." The Indian Territory operated under its own rules. 74,000 square miles with no local law, just federal marshals moving alone through nations that didn't answer to Washington. Bass had built his career on being untouchable. One accusation could collapse everything. This wasn't about bringing in an outlaw anymore. This was about what Dozier knew, and who else he'd told. The campfire crackled. The brothers waited in the dark. Bass realized the chase had reversed. Night fell heavy across the prairie. Bass heard them before he saw them, 3 horses approaching under a white cloth tied to Jim Dozier's rifle barrel. Truce flag. The brothers dismounted 50 yards out, hands visible. Jim Dozier did the talking, his voice carrying in the stillness. "Let him go. We forget what Bob told us about Arkansas. You go back to Fort Smith. Everybody wins." Bass stood, Winchester cradled but ready. "Your brother killed a federal judge's family. He walks into that courthouse." Jim's face hardened. "You're protecting a murderer to protect yourself. That make you feel like justice?" The words landed. Bass felt them, but the chain stayed locked. Jim whistled. Signal. And suddenly Frank appeared from the tree line, rifle raised. The gunfight lasted 30 seconds. Bass put a round through Jim's shoulder before the brothers scattered into darkness. Dozier watched the whole thing, chains keeping him pinned to the tree. When the silence returned, Dozier's smile caught the moonlight. "They're just getting started, and now they're angry." Then he spoke the truth Bass had been avoiding. "I killed a man during my escape from slavery. Self-defense, but no court will see it that way. If that surfaces, my federal appointment ends. I go to trial in Arkansas, where they still remember escaped slaves who fought back." The blood on Dozier's smile looked black in the firelight. Bass thought he could contain this. He was wrong. "You think you know where this is going? You don't." 120 miles in, Creek Nation, Bass stopped at a trading post for supplies. The building stood alone on the prairie, wood frame, telegraph wire running to a single pole. Bass walked inside and froze. A federal agent sat at the counter, badge visible, asking questions. The trader pointed at Bass. The agent turned. "Deputy Reeves, we need to talk about an incident in Arkansas. 1862. Someone had tipped them." Dozier's brothers moved faster than Bass expected. The agent's voice stayed professional. "There's an inquiry. Questions about a man named Crawford who died the night you escaped from the Reeves plantation. We need your statement within 24 hours. Bass felt the ground shift. Dozier waited outside, still chained, listening through the open door. Bass had one play left. Deliver Dozier alive to Judge Parker. Dozier could testify it was self-defense. His uncle had witnessed it. Without Dozier's testimony, Bass had no defense. The chains that were supposed to hold Dozier captive had become Dozier's leverage. Bass needed him breathing more than Dozier needed freedom. The agent handed Bass a summons. "Fort Smith Courthouse. Tomorrow by noon, or we issue a warrant." Bass walked outside. Dozier's grin was already waiting. "Funny how things turn, isn't it?" The telegraph machine inside clicked, sending Bass's name across the territory. The roles had reversed. Bass wasn't hunting anymore. He was being hunted, and the only witness who could save him was the racist outlaw chained to his saddle. The irony tasted like rust and blood. If you're hooked now, wait till you hear what happens next. 160 miles in, Oklahoma plains, the sky turned black with storm. Thunder rolled across the flat land like artillery. Bass knew the danger immediately, metal chains in open country during lightning. Dozier couldn't run with 30 pounds of iron on his ankles. Bass made a decision that broke every rule. He unlocked the leg chains. Dozier stared at his freed ankles, disbelief turning to calculation. "You trust me?" Bass's answer was cold. I need you alive. That's not trust. The rain hit like a wall. Visibility dropped to 10 feet. That's when the gunfire started. Dozier's brothers using the storm as cover, muzzle flashes appearing in sheets of rain. Bass returned fire, but the mud made movement impossible. Dozier could have run. The chains were off. Freedom was 20 yards into the storm. Instead, he grabbed Bass's Winchester from the saddle and fired twice into the darkness. Hit one of the brothers. Cole went down screaming. The others retreated. When the rain cleared an hour later, Dozier handed the rifle back. Bass stared at him. Why? Dozier's answer came quiet. Because they want me dead. You want me alive. Simple math. The truth was uglier than that. Dozier's brothers wanted to claim the $5,000 bounty themselves. Dead or alive meant dead was easier. Bass was the only federal marshal who'd bring Dozier in breathing, and breathing meant testifying, which meant the brothers faced murder charges too. Survival makes strange allies, but it doesn't make them friends. The chains went back on. Both men rode in silence. The storm passed. The final 80 miles stretched ahead like a blood debt neither man wanted to pay. 180 miles from Fort Smith, 1 day from the courthouse, Bass and Dozier made camp for the last time. No fire, no light. Just two men sitting in darkness, chains between them like a contract neither signed, but both were bound to honor. Dozier spoke first. I need you alive as much as you need me. My brothers want the bounty. Judge Parker wants a hanging. You're the only one who benefits from me walking into that courthouse breathing. Bass listened. Dozier continued. I testify about Arkansas. Your uncle witnessed the Crawford killing, confirms it was self-defense. You testify I cooperated during transport. Judge Parker reduces my sentence. We both walk away. The deal made sense. Cruel sense. The chains had become negotiation tools. Bass asked the question that mattered. Why tell me about Arkansas at all? Dozier's laugh was bitter. Because I'm not dying for killing a judge's family. I'd rather do 15 years and live than hang because my brothers got greedy. They shook hands over the locked shackles, the most unlikely contract in territorial history. The hunt wasn't law versus outlaw. It was two men using each other to escape pasts that wouldn't let go. Bass kept the chains locked, but the power had equalized. Dozier wasn't cargo anymore. He was leverage, and leverage in the Indian Territory of 1875 was the only currency that mattered more than bullets. They rode through the night, no sleep, no trust, just mutual need wrapped in iron and desperation. 190 miles, Arkansas border. The Dozier brothers made their final stand at dawn. All three, Jim's shoulder bandaged, Frank with a fresh horse, Cole limping but armed. They knew Bob would testify. They knew that testimony would put them on trial for conspiracy to murder a federal judge's family. Dead brothers don't talk. The gunfight happened fast. Bass killed Frank with the first shot. Center mass, no hesitation. Cole took a round to the leg, went down hard. Jim fled into the tree line. But Bob Dozier took a bullet meant for Bass. Shoulder wound through and through, bleeding heavy. The brothers scattered. Bass caught Dozier before he hit the ground. The racist outlaw who called him slave boy now owed Bass his life. And Bass, hunting a man who knew his darkest secret, now owed Dozier his career. The final 10 miles became a blur. Bass tied Dozier to the saddle, chains dragging in the dirt behind them, leaving marks in the road like scars. Blood soaked through Dozier's shirt. Bass pushed the horses past exhaustion. They reached Fort Smith Courthouse on October 11th, 1875. 8 days after they left, 200 miles of hell between then and now. The crowd that gathered wasn't celebrating. They were staring. A black marshal carrying a half-dead white outlaw, both covered in blood, both barely standing. Judge Parker met them on the courthouse steps. Is he breathing? Bass nodded. Barely. The chains came off in front of everyone. Dozier collapsed. Bass caught him again. The blood trail and chain marks told a story nobody expected. Two men who hated each other had saved each other's lives. The courthouse doors opened. The truth walked in. The courtroom packed within an hour. Federal agents, journalists, white citizens who'd heard rumors of a black marshal protecting a white murderer. Judge Isaac Parker presided. the hanging judge who'd sent 79 men to the gallows. Dozier testified first, shoulder bandaged, voice weak but clear. Bass Reeves killed a man named Crawford in Arkansas, 1862. My uncle witnessed it. Crawford attacked Bass with a branding iron. Bass fought back. It was self-defense. I'll swear to it. The federal inquiry evaporated in one sentence. Then Bass testified about Dozier's cooperation during transport, how Dozier returned with the rifle during the storm, how he took a bullet meant for Bass during the final ambush. Judge Parker listened, face unreadable. The sentence came down hard. 15 years, not death. Cooperation credit. The courtroom exploded. White citizens screamed. A black marshal had partnered with a white murderer. Dozier stood, chains removed, hands free for the first time in 8 days. His final words to the court, "He's a better man than any marshal I've known. And I've known plenty." Bass didn't respond. He picked up his chains, coiled them slowly, and walked out. The empty shackles on the courthouse table caught the afternoon light. Both men had been freed by telling the truth. But freedom doesn't erase the cost. Respect earned in chains weighs more than respect given in ceremony. Bob Dozier served 12 years in federal prison, released in 1887. Bass Reeves continued his career. 3,000 arrests over 32 years, the same iron chains used on every single one. But the cost was silent and personal. White supremacist groups sent threats. Some called Bass a traitor for protecting Dozier. Others called him a legend for bringing in a man everyone said was impossible to catch. The truth lived somewhere in the middle, in the space between chains and freedom. Bass and Dozier never spoke again. No letters, no visits. The 200-mile journey stayed between them like a scar neither wanted to reopen. But the chains remained. Museum piece now, rusted and worn, displayed under glass at Fort Smith National Historic Site. The placard reads, "Used in over 3,000 arrests by Deputy U.S. Marshal Bass Reeves, first black federal marshal west of the Mississippi." It doesn't mention Dozier, doesn't mention the racist insult or the storm or the blood trail, just numbers and dates. Clean history. Bass Reeves died in 1910, buried in Fort Smith. The chains outlived him. They outlived Dozier. They outlived everyone who knew what really happened on that 200-mile journey through hell. The chains that enslaved him became the tool that freed him, and the burden he carried alone. 2024. Fort Smith National Historic Site draws thousands of tourists yearly. They stop at the Bass Reeves exhibit, black and white photos, newspaper clippings, the famous Winchester rifle mounted on velvet, and there, behind bulletproof glass, sit the iron shackles. 30 pounds of rusted metal, leg chains with double locks, still bearing dark stains the museum won't confirm are blood. The placard is brief. Leg irons used by Deputy Marshal Bass Reeves during his 32-year career. Over 3,000 criminals apprehended. 14 men killed in self-defense. 0 escapes. Tourists take photos. Kids press their faces against the glass. Nobody asks about the 200-mile journey. Nobody mentions Bob Dozier's name. The story died with the men who lived it. But the chains remain, holding their secrets like they held outlaws. Locked, silent, unbreakable. Some men break chains. Bass Reeves made them legendary. You want to know what makes a man? It's not the arrests or the accolades or the ceremony at the end. It's what he carries when nobody's watching. It's the weight of iron that once enslaved him, transformed into the tool that defined him. It's walking 200 miles with a man who sees him as property, knowing that man holds the power to destroy everything he built. It's choosing to bring him in alive when dead would have been easier, safer, cleaner. Bass Reeves carried those chains for 32 years, carried the weight of being first, carried the burden of perfection in a world that expected him to fail. The chains sit in a museum now, clean and categorized. But if you look close, real close, you can still see the bloodstains. You can still hear them rattle across 200 miles of territory that wanted both men dead. The chains never forgot, and what he refuses to put down.